Well, it's been a wonderful day, and I can't wait to see the long form of these presentations that are going to be published by Melbourne University Press. There were so many times today where you'd hear a gem of an idea, but it wouldn't get to be elaborated on quite as much as you would have liked. And particularly as a historian, I can't wait to see the footnotes and the proof in the pudding of everything that everyone has been saying. We started this morning with David Kemp talking about A.W. Martin and how Martin acted as a sort of watershed from what had been quite partisan takes on what Menzies had done and Menzies' impact on the country. And I know it's sort of very dismissive of Judith Brett's work, which happens to come just before Martin's book, but this intellectual framework really works for a lot of what we're doing. We're talking about a Menzies that has passed from a partisan figure that people are just throwing around, that even say in the early 90s, Menzies was still such a partisan figure with Paul Keating, how he was talking about it. But now we've got this level of objectivity that we can take a look back and really appreciate the impact that Menzies had on shaping modern Australia. And the other thing that Kemp talked about was the fact that Menzies wanted a politics that was about belief, rather than about putting beliefs into practice, rather than about expediency, rather than about bowing to pressure groups. And it wasn't just any old beliefs. It wasn't hardcore partisan ideological beliefs. It was well thought through beliefs. And that's something that's really come out in the discussion today. We have things like Greg Malusha's paper on Menzies' idea of what the role of a university was, and that a liberal education was so important, and a liberal education was a difficult education. It was an education in which you really grappled with ideas. You exposed yourself to things. You engaged with books, and we have Menzies' books, and we see how much he really read them and thought about them and underlined them and made comments on them. And we really like to encourage academics to use the Menzies collection to really get a greater understanding of Menzies, and it's really nice to hear that Judith Brett has already been doing that. She beat us to the punch about 30 years ago. And a lot of the other speakers sort of touched on that intellectual heft of Menzies. So you have things like Justice Edelman talking about Menzies and the law, and one of the reasons why Menzies was so good at the law and so passionate about the law is that the law is this sort of purified form of arguing ideas. That's almost all what legalism is. And in things like the engineer's case, Menzies might not necessarily have agreed ideologically with what he was arguing, but he was so passionate about the argument itself and about grappling with those ideas. And similarly, our last presentation by Nick Cater, you had the power of Menzies' ideas with the Forgotten People essays. And it's really about not just those ideas, but also contextualizing Menzies. So you had Troy's wonderful presentation where you find out that Menzies is an extraordinary product of extraordinary circumstances. So it's not just that Menzies is so smart and so he succeeds so much in academia and he succeeds in the law and basically could have been whatever he wanted to be, but he came from a family that really nurtured this idea of politics as public service, which is something we might not appreciate today. I think it's really important to note that we're talking about an 1890s context where maybe in Victoria they had introduced payment of members, but it was still very much a hot button issue, this idea that people should serve in Parliament without remuneration because it was purely for public service. Other contexts like Judith Brett's piece about deaconite liberalism and the great liberal tradition and liberal debates that had gone on in Australia before Menzies. And I think one of the problems with Menzies is because Menzies is such a towering figure, he is such an important person, and because he has created the political party of the centre-right that has endured, unlike the previous ones, people of the centre-right don't tend to read enough of the pre-Menzies history and the things that went into sort of making Menzies. And that's also true of David First Roberts, grappling with Menzies' religious beliefs and his Presbyterianism and how these sort of intersected with social problems like sectarianism and how he had a really unique view that was sort of sentimentally attached to Presbyterianism as an idea that was also part of his Scottish identity, but at the same time, he really didn't take much of the theology of Presbyterianism with him, and he really had this sort of broader-minded Christianity. We also had an example of what going forward will be a lot of what we do is engage in existing historical debates around Menzies with Anne Henderson's rather fiery piece that produced a bit of a response. And then you also had Scott Pratis's really sort of intense and detailed analysis of Menzies' leadership and leadership skills and how he learnt over the years. And it's a really great platform because we've been talking so much today, I think, about Menzies, the man, and Menzies, his ideas and his thoughts. And then this is the first RMI annual conference to be followed by 3 others. And they will tend to be, even though we definitely want to keep grappling with Menzies' liberalism and Menzies' thought, they will be a bit more policy-based because we are moving into Menzies' main period of prime ministership where he did so much to shape modern Australia. And I know that the speakers for this particular conference were directly invited because we had a short period of time and wanted to get it off the ground, but we're going to have a call for papers, and we really want as broad an ideas, anything tangentially related to Menzies, as long as it really has something to say about the Menzies era and what Menzies did or did not do. You can also, we want critical pieces, we want to encourage academic freedom and academic discourse on the University of Melbourne. So we really look forward to anyone who puts into a submission to that. I won't hold you any longer because it's been a very long day. Thank you all.